My dear mother-in-law, we've now left the area around Gennesaret where Jesus has been teaching and have travelled about 50 miles northwest to the territory of Tyre and Sidon. I must admit I feel rather uncomfortable here. Not only are most of the people here not Jews, but they're Canaanites, our enemies, almost as bad as the Romans. And like any good Jew, I want as little to do with them as possible. Anyway, being a good disciple, I followed where Jesus went, despite my discomfort. Jesus went into a house, and very quickly we were joined by horrible horrors, a Canaanite, and not just by any Canaanite, but a woman. You can imagine my feelings. I just wanted to get out of there and take Jesus with me. Not only did this woman force her way into the house, but she had the audacity to ask Jesus for help. And it was her, rather than her husband, coming to ask Jesus. So she was probably a widow, the lowest of the low. And here she was, following Jesus around, asking him to heal her daughter. The shame and embarrassment of it. So we waited to see what Jesus would do. Hopefully send her way, tell her to stop following us and creating all this fuss. Jesus' initial reaction had a smiling and nodding agreement. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." That was telling her. Jesus put the woman firmly in her place, demonstrating that us Jews really were God's chosen people and superior to all others. She was like the dog that we'd often refer to Gentiles as. At least that is what I thought Jesus was getting at, as his words said that. But I wasn't so sure about his tone of voice, and he was looking at the woman rather than us. Instead of creeping out of the house as I expected, the woman answered Jesus back. "Sir," she said, "even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." I waited to see what Jesus would do next, how he would reinforce that she was nothing and we, the Jews, are God's chosen people. But he didn't. Instead, he applauded what she said and told her that her daughter would be healed. When she went, Jesus just looked at us. It was as though he'd missed something in what had been said, as though there had been a much deeper conversation going on between Jesus and the woman, one that we hadn't picked up on. As we were walking from Tyre to Sidon, I kept reflecting on the conversation we'd heard. So many times when Jesus had said something to someone, it has been to teach us as well. So what could I take from this? Initially, I'd agreed with Jesus being rude to the woman, as it fitted in with what I thought about her. But it didn't fit in with what Jesus usually does. I've never heard him send someone away like that, well, other than the Pharisees. But here was a woman in trouble, a vulnerable person. It didn't make sense, especially as he applauded what she said to him and promised her daughter would be healed. And then I thought of his tone of voice. I remember the times when you called me a little monkey or a pest, and how such a comment could be considered derogatory was changed by your facial expression and tone of voice into a term of endearment. Well, I think it was. So maybe Jesus, instead of being rude, was challenging her, probing to see if her faith had any depth to it. I could imagine him saying it to her, with a smile on her face, as though they were sharing something that we couldn't. And her answer showed that she was not as downtrodden as I'd believed. I wondered if in her words she was laughing at us, and accepting her status as a dog in our eyes, then like a dog in a home who'd received scraps from the table, then she knew that the blessing that Jesus brought to the Jews would come to her and other Gentiles too. If that is so, maybe she understands something that we don't. As the chosen nation, Israel has the right and privilege to hear and experience Jesus first. However, are we wrong in thinking it is only for us? Will one day Gentiles like her be raised up to become children in their own right and have equal status with us Jews? It makes me feel uncomfortable. The more I think about it, the more it fits in what Jesus has been teaching us about God's kingdom. A place of love, acceptance and forgiveness, where all who want to come will be welcomed, no matter who they are. So for me to feel superior and condemn this woman because she is different is wrong, not only for me, but for all those who use racial identity as an excuse of suppression, murder, and acts of violence. But maybe I'm overthinking it, and Jesus really was being rude and sarcastic to this woman. Yet I can't get it out of my head that Jesus treated her as a real person who had something important to say, and whose intellectual wit was worth engaging with. And I suppose deep down I feel really annoyed that Jesus was able to engage with a woman, and a Gentile woman at that, and she understood things that I, one of Jesus' closest friends, cannot get my head round. Maybe I need to talk to Jesus about this. I can't now, as they've just brought a man to Jesus who is deaf and has a speech impediment. Hope to see you soon. Love, Peter.